Congratulations, the house is officially yours.
Thank you so much. We love it.
The front door wasn't my front door anymore. I stood on the sand-dusted porch of my beach house, key in hand, and the metal wouldn't even slide in. A new brass lock stared back at me like I was a stranger. For a second, my brain tried to explain it away. Maybe I grabbed the wrong key. Maybe I was so tired from the drive that I walked to the wrong place. But the salt-stained welcome sign my dad made was still there, hanging crooked on the same nail. The wind smelled like sunscreen and ocean foam. And everything felt normal except the part where my own house had decided I didn't belong. I stepped off the porch to look around. And that's when I saw it at the edge of the yard, a clean, bright sign planted in the ground like a warning. Sold. The letters were bold and confident. The kind of confident that doesn't ask questions. I felt my throat tighten. I walked closer, reading the real estate company's name and the agent's phone number, as if my eyes could correct it by staring hard enough. This house wasn't for sale. It was never supposed to be for sale. It was my family's place, our little stretch of peace by the water, paid off, insured, and loved. Yet the sign said my memories had a new owner. 6 months earlier, I had left in a rush. My mom had gotten sick back in Arizona, and I flew out with 2 suitcases and a promise to come back soon. Just for a few weeks, I told myself. Weeks became months. Hospital rooms all looked the same after a while. Beeping machines. Dry air, long nights when you stare at the ceiling and wonder how life flipped upside down so fast. I paid my bills online, answered texts when I could, and tried to keep the world running from a distance. I didn't come back to the beach house because I didn't want to. I didn't come back because life didn't let me. I heard a screen door creak next door. My neighbor, Mr. Halverson, stepped out holding a mug of coffee, wearing the same floppy hat he always wore. We used to wave at each other every morning. This time, he froze when he saw me. His eyes flicked to the sold sign and then back to me like he'd been caught. "Mornin'," I said, forcing calm into my voice. He didn't answer right away. Finally, he cleared his throat and said, I didn't know you were coming back." That was a strange thing to say, like he'd been told I wasn't supposed to. "Yeah," I replied. Neither did my house, apparently. Before Mr. Halverson could say more, the deadbolt clicked from inside my house. The door opened, and a woman I'd never seen stood there with a moving box in her arms. Behind her, my living room looked half familiar and half invaded. Different curtains. Someone's shoes by the entryway, a new rug rolled up in plastic. She smiled politely, the way you smile at someone who's lost. "Can I help you?" she asked. My mouth went dry. "This is my house," I said, and my voice cracked like I didn't believe it myself. Her smile vanished. "We bought this house," she said slowly. "We closed last month." The box slipped a little in her grip, and she tightened her hold like the truth was heavy. Her husband appeared behind her. Taller, cautious, eyes darting between me and the porch. "Is there a problem?" he asked, already on edge. I raised my hands, palms out, trying not to look like a threat. "I'm not here to cause trouble," I said. "But I didn't sell this place. I never listed it. I've owned it for years." The husband's jaw tightened. The woman's face softened just a bit, like she could tell I wasn't acting. "We bought it through a sale," she said carefully, "not a regular listing. It was connected to the HOA. The 3 letters hit me like a slap. HOA, Homeowners Association. The people who sent cheery newsletters and strict reminders about trash can lids. My chest tightened. "What do you mean connected to the HOA?" I asked. I stepped away from the porch and called the agent's number on the sold sign with shaky fingers. It rang twice. A bright voice answered. "Thank you for calling Seabreeze Realty. This is Kendra." I swallowed hard and said, "Hi, I'm standing in front of 112 Shoreline Cove." and there's a sold sign in the yard. I'm the owner. I didn't sell it. Silence. Then Kendra's voice lowered into something careful. Ma'am, that property was sold at an HOA foreclosure auction, she said. It was public record. All my legs felt weak. Foreclosure. I repeated. That's not possible. There's no mortgage. Kendra sighed, like she'd said this before. HOAs can foreclose for unpaid dues and fines, she said. You'd need to speak to the association's attorney. I found the HOA's number in my email and called immediately. The line went to a receptionist who sounded bored before I even spoke. Seacliff Dunes Association, she said flatly. How can I direct your call? I didn't bother with small talk. This is Natalie Carter, I said. My beach house was sold. I did not authorize it. I need to know what happened. The receptionist paused, tapping keys. According to our records, she said, the property at 112 Shoreline Cove was in violation and delinquent. The board followed procedure. My hands clenched around the phone. Followed procedure. I snapped. I didn't get any notice. I've been paying my dues. The receptionist's tone hardened. Ma'am, you'll need to submit a written request or contact our legal counsel. We cannot discuss board actions over the phone. I drove to the HOA office, which sat behind a manicured hedge, like it was hiding from accountability. Inside, framed photos of smiling families lined the walls, the kind of pictures that pretend rules are friendly. The manager, a man named Dennis, finally met with me. He didn't offer a seat. He didn't offer empathy. He opened a folder and said, "The board made an assumption the property was abandoned." I stared at him. Because I was gone caring for my mother. I asked. Dennis shrugged. No one responded to notices. The lawn got overgrown. The exterior paint was peeling. The mailbox overflowed. I felt my face heat up. So you assumed I disappeared, I said, and you sold my house? Dennis tapped the folder. We followed the covenant enforcement timeline, he said. Like that sentence was supposed to make it okay. Dennis read the list like he was reading grocery items. Violation 1. Lawn height exceeded allowed inches. Violation 2. Trash can left visible beyond permitted hours. Violation 3. Exterior maintenance peeling paint on window trim. Violation 4. Failure to pressure wash driveway. I almost laughed, but no sound came out. You're telling me you took my home over weeds and a dirty driveway? I asked. Dennis looked annoyed. It wasn't just violations, he corrected. There were also unpaid dues and late fees. I pulled up my banking app and shoved my phone toward him. I pay dues on autopay, I said. Every month. Dennis barely glanced. Our ledger shows missed payments, he replied. If you believe there's an error, you may dispute it through counsel. His calm made me furious. Back in my car, I sat shaking, scrolling through transactions. HOA dues paid. HOA dues paid. HOA dues paid. The payments were real. I could see them. But Dennis had a folder full of official-looking documents that said I was delinquent. Somewhere, my money had vanished into a mess, or someone had pushed it into the wrong account, or something worse. I thought about the months I was away, the way time blurred between hospital updates and late-night snacks from vending machines. I wasn't watching the house closely. I wasn't checking the mailbox. And now that gap had turned into a trap. I whispered to myself, okay, breathe, figure it out. But my hands wouldn't stop trembling on the steering wheel. The next stop was the county recorder's office. If my house had changed hands, it would be there, stamped into public history. The building smelled like old paper and stale air conditioning. A clerk at the counter pulled up the property record and turned the screen slightly so I could see. My name was on the deed till it wasn't. There was a recorded lien from the HOA, then a notice of sale, then a trustee's deed transferring ownership to a company I'd never heard of, and then another deed transferring it to the couple now living in my house. The dates were clean and official. The clerk spoke gently, like she'd seen heartbreak before. "Ma'am," she said, "it looks like the process was completed." My voice went thin. "Completed doesn't mean correct," I said. I asked the clerk to print everything. Page after page slid out legal language, dates, signatures, stamps. The lien had been filed 3 months after I left. The notice of sale had been posted a month after that. The auction happened on a Tuesday morning at the courthouse steps. I pictured it, people holding coffees, scanning lists, bidding on pieces of strangers' lives. Then the title transferred. All while I was sitting beside my mom's hospital bed, rubbing her hand and promising her she'd be okay. I hadn't known my home was being chopped up into documents. The clerk pointed to a section. "Notice was mailed to the owner of record," she said. "That would be you." I swallowed. "Mailed where?" I asked. The mailing address listed was my beach house itself. Not my Arizona address. Not my email. Not the forwarding address I set up months ago. They mailed warnings to the house they were trying to take, I said out loud, stunned. A house they believed was abandoned. The logic made my head hurt. The clerk shrugged in that helpless way government employees do when the system is running exactly as designed, even when it hurts people. I left the building with a folder full of paperwork and a feeling that I'd walked into a maze. Outside, the sun was bright and the world kept moving cars. Footsteps, a couple laughing. I wanted to grab someone and say, "Do you realize a home can vanish while you're gone?" But I found a local real estate attorney named Marissa Velez. Her office was small, clean, and serious, with no beach-themed decorations, which somehow made me trust her more. I spilled everything in one breath. My mom's illness, it's a month away, the new locks, the sold sign, Dennis and his folder. Marissa listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "HOA foreclosures happen more than people think." My heart sank. "So it's legal?" I asked. She held up a hand. "Legal process doesn't mean it was done properly," she said. "Our job is to find where they cut corners, where they failed notice requirements, and whether fraud or accounting errors played a role." Marissa explained it in plain English. "If an HOA claims you owe money," she said, "they can place a lien on the property. In some states, they can foreclose like a lender would, even if you own your home outright. The law usually requires certain notices, timelines, and opportunities to cure the debt." I clenched my jaw. "But the debt isn't real," I said. "I paid." Marissa nodded. "Then we focus on proof," she said. "We'll subpoena the HOA ledger, their bank records, and their management company records. We'll also examine how they served notices. If they knowingly mailed notices to an empty house while ignoring other contact info, that matters." She paused. "One more thing," she added. "We need to act quickly because the house was resold to buyers." That evening, I went back to the house not to trespass, but to talk. The couple introduced themselves as Ethan and Claire. Their faces looked tired, like they were carrying their own kind of stress. "We didn't know," Claire said, her voice shaky. "We thought it was sad, but legal. The realtor said it was clean title after the HOA sale." Ethan rubbed his forehead. "We put everything we had into buying this," he admitted. Hearing that made my anger shift. I wasn't staring at criminals. I was staring at 2 regular people who believed paperwork. "I'm not trying to ruin your lives," I told them. "I'm trying to get mine back." Claire swallowed hard. "What happens now?" she asked. I looked past them at my living room, at my dad's old surf photos still hanging on the wall. "Now," I said, "I fight the HOA." Marissa sent a formal letter demanding records and a pause on any eviction action. 2 days later, Dennis called me. His voice wasn't calm anymore. "You're making a serious accusation," he said. "The board acted within its authority." I kept my voice steady. "Then you won't mind sharing full accounting records and proof of notice," I replied. Dennis made a sound like a laugh. "You people always come back after the fact," he said. "You ignore letters, ignore violations, then act shocked." My grip tightened around the phone. "You sent letters to the empty house," I said. "And you ignored my email on file." Dennis went quiet for a beat. Then he said, "We don't have to chase owners. Owners have responsibilities." The coldness in his tone made my skin crawl. Marissa and I attended the next HOA board meeting. It was held in a bland community room with folding chairs and a plate of store-bought cookies no one touched. The board president, a woman named Linda Pike, sat at the front like a judge. When she saw me, her lips pressed into a tight line. During open comments, I stood up and said, "My house was taken and sold while I was out of state caring for my mother. I paid my dues. I received no notice. I want answers." Linda didn't blink. "The board followed the governing documents," she said. "Your property was neglected. The neighborhood standard matters." I stared at her. "So your standard matters more than my rights?" I asked. Linda's eyes hardened. "We protect property values," she said. After the meeting, Marissa requested copies of the board minutes tied to my case. When we finally got them, one line jumped out like it was highlighted in neon. The minutes mentioned a recommended purchaser who would restore the property quickly and support community standards. The name was the investment company that bought my home at auction, the company that flipped it to Ethan and Claire. Marissa dug deeper and found something that made my stomach flip. One of the HOA board members had a brother who worked for that same investment company. "That's a conflict," Marissa said, tapping the document. "At minimum, it's suspicious. At worst, it's coordinated." I felt like the ocean had turned to ice. This wasn't just a mistake. This might have been a plan. Marissa subpoenaed the HOA's financial records. When the documents arrived, they came in messy spreadsheets and scanned receipts. We spent hours going through them line by line. Then Marissa circled an entry and looked up at me. "Natalie," she said, "your payments are here." They were posted to the wrong account. My eyes burned. Wrong account. I repeated, "How?" Marissa pointed. The account number was close to mine, off by one digit. A simple error could do that, except the error happened repeatedly, month after month, even after late notices started. A reasonable management company would catch that, Marissa said, especially after sending delinquency letters. I felt anger rise like a tide. "So they watched me miss payments," I said, "while cashing my money under someone else's name." The HOA claimed they served me official notice by certified mail. They provided a green return receipt card with a signature proof. They said that I received it. Marissa handed me the copy and asked quietly, "Is this your signature?" I stared at it. The name was mine, but the handwriting wasn't. It looked like someone guessing. A loop where I never looped, a slant I didn't use. I felt my pulse pound in my ears. "That's not mine," I said. Marissa's expression stayed controlled, but her eyes sharpened. "If that signature is forged," she said, "it changes everything." I pictured someone signing my name like it was nothing. Like my home was just a file to push through. My voice shook. "Who would do that?" I asked. Marissa answered softly, "Someone who needed the process to look clean." We tracked down the local mail carrier who covered Shoreline Cove. His name was Jerome, and he met us outside the post office after his route. Jerome listened while we explained the situation. Then he nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said, "I remember that box." My chest tightened. "Was it overflowing?" I asked. Jerome shrugged. Sometimes, he admitted. But I also remember a mail hold request at one point, and then forwarding. He paused, thinking. And I remember certified mail slips. I left notices. But nobody ever came to sign. Marissa leaned in. Did you ever hand certified mail to anyone at the address? She asked. Jerome shook his head. No, he said. If someone signed for it, it wasn't in person with me at that door. I felt a strange mix of relief and rage. The forged signature wasn't just possible. It was likely. I printed out old HOA emails on my home printer, stacking them like evidence bricks. Welcome messages. Meeting notices. A reminder about parking rules. They had emailed me plenty of times in the past. They knew how to reach me. Yet, for the foreclosure notices, they claimed they followed procedure by mailing paper letters to the very house they accused me of abandoning. Marissa highlighted the email addresses in the documents. They can argue the law only requires mailing, she said. But a judge will look at reasonableness and good faith, especially if there's conflict of interest and forged proof. I thought about how easy it would have been for Dennis to email me, call us. This is serious. One email could have saved my home. Instead, they chose silence that benefited them. Marissa filed an emergency motion asking the court to pause any eviction and to freeze further transfers of the property while we challenged the foreclosure. The paperwork was thick and intimidating, full of legal terms that made my head spin. But Marissa walked me through it. We were alleging improper notice, accounting errors, potential fraud, and conflict of interest. When I signed my declaration, my hand shook. I wasn't a person who enjoyed fights. I wasn't someone who dreamed of courtrooms. I wanted quiet mornings, coffee on the porch, and waves in the background. But the moment my key didn't fit my own lock, quiet stopped being an option. I looked at Marissa and said, "Do you think I can win?" She replied, "I think you have a real case." The hearing happened fast. The courtroom felt too bright, too formal, like it wasn't built to hold heartbreak. Ethan and Claire were there too, sitting behind their attorney, looking scared and exhausted. The HOA's attorney spoke with smooth confidence, calling me delinquent and non-responsive and saying the board had no choice. Marissa stood and laid out our evidence: the misapplied payments, the email contact history, the suspicious board connection, and the questionable certified mail signature. The judge's expression tightened. He asked the HOA attorney pointed questions. Why wasn't additional contact attempted? He asked, why did the records show payments made? The HOA attorney stumbled. In the end, the judge granted a temporary restraining order stopping eviction. The gavel sound felt like oxygen returning to my lungs. News travels faster than seagulls in a beach town. Within days, people in the community were talking. Some neighbors avoided me like I carried trouble. Others quietly offered support. One woman, Denise, slipped a note under my car windshield while I was parked near the HOA office. They did this to my cousin in another town. Don't give up. Mr. Halverson finally came over and admitted he'd seen notices taped to my door, then ripped down by wind, then replaced. I thought you were just ignoring them, he said, shame in his eyes. Linda told folks you ran off. I swallowed anger. I didn't run off, I said. I was taking care of my mom. He nodded slowly. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have called you. The community felt different, now less friendly, more fragile. One evening, Ethan called me. His voice was careful. We talked, he said. We want to understand what happened. We don't want to be part of something wrong. I met him and Claire at a coffee shop near the pier. They looked like they hadn't slept. Claire wrapped both hands around her cup like she needed warmth. We saved for years, she said quietly. We thought we finally found our forever place. My heart ached for them because I knew that feeling. "I'm sorry," I told them. "I truly am." Ethan nodded. "If the sale was shady," he said, "we want the truth too. We bought title insurance. Our agent said we'd be protected." Marissa later explained that title insurance could become a major piece someone would pay if the title was defective. Still, it didn't erase the human cost. The discovery phase began, and it felt like pulling on a thread that might unravel an entire sweater. Dennis was deposed first. Under oath, he admitted the management company received my payments but blamed software errors for posting them wrong. Then he admitted they never attempted to call me, despite having my phone number. Linda Pike's deposition was worse. She insisted the board assumed abandonment because the house looked uncared for. Marissa asked, "Did you know Ms. Carter was out of state for a family medical emergency?" Linda hesitated. "I heard rumors," she said. Marissa pressed, "So you heard, but you proceeded anyway." Linda's face tightened. Then Marissa asked about the board member's connection to the investor company. Linda claimed she didn't recall the relationship. The more she dodged, the more obvious it became. They weren't innocent mistakes. They were choices. Marissa hired a handwriting expert to compare the certified mail signature with known samples of my old checks. My driver's license renewal, even a birthday card I'd signed years ago. The expert's report came back with a conclusion that made my skin prickle. The certified mail signature was highly inconsistent with my handwriting. In plain English, it looked fake. Marissa sent the report to the HOA attorney. Suddenly, their tone changed. They were less confident, more careful. Dennis stopped calling me. Linda stopped making speeches. The HOA attorney requested a private settlement meeting. "They're nervous," Marissa said. "And they should be." For the first time since I returned, I felt something close to hope. Not relief, because nothing was fixed yet, but hope that the truth had weight. We learned more about the investor company that bought my house at the auction. It wasn't a friendly local business. It was a quick flip operation that bought distressed properties, slapped on cheap upgrades, and resold fast. In emails Marissa obtained, one of their employees wrote, "HOA Salesi close. Minimal owner pushback expected." That line made my stomach turn. Minimal pushback. Like I was supposed to stay silent. Like my life was predictable to them. Another email referenced Linda Pike by first name, thanking her for keeping the neighborhood clean. When Marissa showed me that, I had to stand up and pace the room to keep from screaming. "They planned this," I said. Marissa nodded. "It looks coordinated," she agreed. And coordinated becomes liability. The court ordered mediation. We met in a neutral office with a mediator who spoke calmly, like calm could soften what had happened. The HOA attorney arrived with a stack of binders, trying to look prepared. Linda came too, wearing a crisp blazer and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I sat beside Marissa, hands folded tight. Ethan and Claire attended with their attorney, looking miserable. The mediator asked each side to summarize. When it was my turn, I didn't use fancy words. "This house is my family," I said. "I left to care for my mom. I paid my dues. You assumed I abandoned my home, and you sold it out from under me. That assumption was wrong. And now for lives are tangled because you didn't bother to check." Linda rolled her eyes. The mediator noticed. That small moment mattered more than she realized. Before mediation ended, the judge held a status conference. He had reviewed the handwriting report and the payment records. His patience was gone. "An HOA is not a private kingdom," he said sharply. "Property rights are serious. Due process is serious." The HOA attorney tried to argue technical compliance, but the judge interrupted. "Technical compliance doesn't excuse bad faith," he said. Then he looked at the HOA side and asked, Why did you proceed with foreclosure when your own ledger shows payments received? The room went silent. Dennis stared at the table. Linda's face tightened. The judge set firm deadlines and warned of sanctions. When we walked out, Marissa leaned toward me and said, "They're losing control of the narrative." For months, they acted like I didn't exist. Now a judge was forcing them to look at what they'd done. The HOA's first settlement offer came through their attorney, a small check, a release of future claims, and a suggestion that I move on. I stared at the letter in disbelief. Move on, I repeated. From my own house being sold. Marissa didn't look surprised. "They're testing you," she said. "They want to see if you'll take quick money and disappear." I thought about my dad painting the window trim with me when I was 16. Both of us covered in white paint, laughing at our own mess. I thought about my mom sitting on the porch wrapped in a blanket, watching the sun set like it was a private show. No check could replace that. "Tell them no," I said. "Tell them we're not settling for an apology and a pocketful of nothing." Marissa nodded. "Good," she said, "because we're just getting started." After another round of evidence exchanges, the HOA returned with a different offer. They would pay my legal fees, compensate Ethan and Claire for relocation costs, and agree to unwind the foreclosure, meaning the title would be corrected back to me. But there was a condition. They wanted a confidentiality agreement. They didn't want the story public. I felt my stomach twist. Part of me wanted to sign, get my home back, and shut the door on the entire nightmare. Another part of me pictured Linda doing this to someone else, an older person, a busy single parent, someone without the money to hire an attorney. I asked Marissa, "If I sign, can they keep doing it?" Marissa said carefully, "A settlement can include policy changes. We can demand reforms as part of the terms." That became my new goal, not just my house, but protection for others. We negotiated hard. The final settlement wasn't perfect, but it was powerful. The HOA agreed to reverse the foreclosure and restore the title to me. They agreed to pay my attorney fees and costs. They also agreed to a reform package, multiple notice methods required before any lien action, including email and phone attempts, a mandatory payment reconciliation process, and a rule that no board member could vote on matters involving any connected business interest. Ethan and Claire would be reimbursed through a combination of HOA payment and title insurance, and they would receive relocation support and a formal apology letter. When I signed the agreement, my hand steadied for the first time in weeks. I wasn't celebrating. I was reclaiming something that never should have been taken. Outside the mediator's office, I breathed in and felt the ocean air in my mind. Like a promise. The day I got the keys again, I sat in my car for a full minute, staring at the front door. The new lock had been removed and replaced with one I chose, something small but symbolic. When I stepped inside, the house smelled different. Not bad, just unfamiliar, like someone else's detergent and someone else's life had soaked into the walls. Some changes remained. Fresh paint in the hallway, new cabinet handles, a repaired deck board. Ethan and Claire had treated the place with care, and that made the bitterness soften a little. I walked room to room, touching door frames, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator, letting my mind catch up with my body. Then I stood in the living room and whispered, "I'm home." My voice echoed like the house was answering. Ethan and Claire met me one last time before they left town. It was awkward, painful, and necessary. Claire's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the porch. "I loved it here," she admitted. "I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry this happened." I nodded. "I'm sorry too," I said, "and I meant it." Ethan sighed. "We were angry at you at first," he said honestly. "We thought you were trying to take something we bought fair and square." I appreciated his honesty. "And I was angry at you for standing in my doorway," I replied. But neither of us caused this. We stood in silence for a moment, hearing waves in the distance. "If you ever want a beach weekend," I said, surprising myself, "reach out. No contracts. No fights. Just the ocean the way it's supposed to be." Claire smiled through tears. "Thank you," she whispered. A month later, I did something I never expected. I ran for the HOA board. People told me it was a bad idea. "Why would you step back into that mess?" they asked. But I had learned something the hard way: you don't pay attention. Someone else will run your neighborhood like a private club. At the next community meeting, I stood up and told my story in plain words. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't scream. I just laid out the facts. Payments misapplied, notices sent to an empty house, an assumption of abandonment, and a foreclosure that should never have happened. You could hear people shifting in their seats, the discomfort of realizing it could happen to them too. When the vote came, I won a seat. Linda Pike didn't look at me as she walked out. For once, she was the one avoiding eyes. Now, when I sit on my porch at sunset, I still feel that first moment, the key not fitting, the sold sign, the shock like cold water. My beach house is mine again, but the story didn't end with a simple victory. It ended with a warning I tell everyone who will listen. Never assume paid off means safe. Never assume an HOA won't go too far, and never assume silence will protect you. The HOA made an assumption about me, and that assumption almost erased my home. If you live under an HOA, keep records, check your statements, update your contact info, and don't ignore letters even when life gets overwhelming. And if something feels wrong, speak up fast. Because sometimes the scariest sound isn't the ocean at night, it's a lock clicking on a door you thought was yours.